Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We just had a live that just ended with Janice and Mark and Claire, and it was also on Peeling the Onion, Our Scientology Stories. And today we're going to do something new. This is going to be a new series that we'll see how it works out, and if it's good, we'll keep doing it. And we're going to talk about the films that were produced in Scientology. And to do that, I'm going to bring on our guest here, Mitch Brisker. Hello, Mitch.
Hey, Mark. Something new.
Yes, something new. We're going to do something new here. For those of you who don't know, my name is Marc Headley, and I worked at Golden Era Productions for 15 years, and that is the production studio, a production complex that's located in Gilman Hot Springs, California, and that is Scientology's propaganda and manufacturing arm for all of its audiovisual items that they have in all their different locations all around the world.
Yeah, they don't manufacture anything up there anymore.
Well, yeah, now they don't.
Once you left, they couldn't figure out how to do it anymore, so they sent it all to LA.
It was actually the reason they stopped doing it is because if you live and work at the same place and you produce something that your boss sells, that is a very key data marker for human trafficking. So the fact that they were building stuff and selling stuff and also living in the same gate made that not a good thing to be doing.
It didn't help that the gate had razor wire on it. So
that's right. Well, during that 15 years that I was there, I would say about 10 of those years, I worked in or around or over the cinematography division of Golden Era Productions. And that is where I started to work with Mitch. Mm-hmm. And Mitch was a professional director that essentially was hired by Golden Era Productions to direct these films. Right. You kind of told this on a bunch of other videos, but if you could just kind of get us up to speed.
Yeah, no problem. I was originally worked for the church originally. In the mid 80s, I worked on the Dianetics campaign in LA. I was approached by an executive. They needed somebody to direct commercials. I was like, yeah, great. And I worked with Caroline Mustard, who recently spoke out on my channel. I worked with Jeff Hawkins, who was later rewarded by having the crap beaten out of him by David Miscavige. But Jeff Hawkins was a marketing genius, and he was behind the Dianetics, huge success. We were selling millions of books in the 80s. And back up at the ranch, literally back at the ranch, there was a move Miscavige wanted to get rid of all the professionals. Like, no more professionals. You should make ads with the Gold Crew. And he yanked marketing up there. And they did everything that Hubbard said to do, and they completely failed. Like, it was just a disaster. So then they said, well, maybe we should start working with pros again. So they brought me up, and I started working on films, and that's just a whole story. It was crazy. Yes. But yeah, so then I came up. That was 1990, and then you came up a few months later.
Yeah, I got there in May of 1990.
So I think I was there January, February. So, I predated you a little bit, but I remember meeting you before you ever came into Cine, and you became like a hot shot in manufacturing. You were like, oh yeah, he's a smart go-getter. And then we were doing pretty well in Cine. So then he was like, let's put the smarter guys into Cine. So then he made you the shoot crew chief, which is like a combination of assistant director, unit production manager in Hollywood, which is also, I have to say, Mark, that is a really problematic job.
Yes.
You stuck you on, because if the logs guy, as we call him, logs guy, which stands for logistics, if he forgot to send food on location, if he forgot to get a permit, if he forgot to give anybody money to put gas in the vehicles, and on and on and on and on, it all fell on you. So
it really was sort of a catch-all post, but that was also the boss.
Yeah, but it becomes your problem. It's a hot seat job. It's you did really well at it. It was a lot of fun watching you.
Yeah, I tried.
You did really well at it. I mean, come on, I went through a lot of shoot crew chiefs.
That's true. I was probably the longest serving
Yeah,
shoot
well,
crew chief.
up until that point, there's been one up there longer now, but
Yeah.
that doesn't really matter because now everybody's had a mind transplant, but it's
Yes.
very different. But yeah, so that's what we did. You ran the crew, and you had to field a lot of drop balls. So
Yeah, and I also had to deal with Mitch. So I have let's say 20 to 30 depending on what we were shooting and where we were shooting and how all that.
Yeah.
We had anywhere from 20 to 30 crew that
really did we have that many?
Yeah.
Are you wow? Because for most of the time after you left, I think on the set maybe 15 people.
Well, that's true, but yeah, but you like.
Oh yeah, you had all the other people. Right.
Yeah, depending on what period it was, there was about 20 or 30 people that made up this team that would produce the film, what they called the shoot crew.
Right.
And we shot. So I'm just going to kind of lay out the kind of what the films are and sort of set the lingo, because we're going to talk about one of the films today. And we Mitch and I were trying to figure out, do we talk about them in the order that the list is, or will we talk about them in the order that we produced them? And we sort of settled on the order that we produced them loosely, because
the other order is too it's a mess. It's like
it is a mess. So we're just going to kind of cover them, but essentially there's two types of films that we were supposed to be shooting at Golden Era Productions. And these were films that had been written by L. Ron Hubbard, and in many cases they had been shot as well and edited and produced and released on 8mm film and then 16mm film.
Yeah, well, there was 26 of them, and they'd gotten all but 7 done. So, but the first one we did, you're going to talk about it. We did it the second time. It was so. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So the two types of films they're called TR films, and they go TR1 through 14. Or is it 15 or 14?
No, 14. That's right.
Yeah.
It's printed in my brain.
I know. I was thinking is there a TR15? I don't think so. So it went to TR1 through TR14, and those were considered what we called training films. Or TR films.
Yeah. They dealt with the communication skills that a person needed in order to give an auditing session.
Yeah, which in Scientology they're called TRs, or training routines.
Right. They're just communication drills is all.
And the other type of film was a film called an EM film, or an E-meter film. And those specifically dealt with the Scientology device called the E-meter. And these films taught you how that worked and how to use it, and how what its part in Scientology and counseling is.
Yeah, and how wonderful it is.
And how amazing it is.
A miracle device.
And so on those, they go EM, it was EM1 through EM10.
Yeah. So then there's a total of 24 films. So 1 through 14, and there was a TR15 and a TR16. I'm sorry.
Yep.
It went all the way to TR16 and then EM1 to EM10. Yeah, so there was.
But also the EM2 film had an A. So there was a film.
Yeah, that was just a lift. I mean, they were basically lifts. Like you would shoot a new opening and ending, and then they'd use those to drill with. Like the E-meter reads film, they'd flash an E-meter read, like whatever the hell it was doing, and then you'd have to say in your mind what it was. So there were a couple of drill films, but it was really 26 core films we did.
Yeah.
And that was the whole reason that I just have to add, that was the whole reason Golden Era Productions was set up.
Yeah.
Period. It was set up for no other reason but to make those films.
That's right. And this is sort of I'm just trying to set the stage. So from when L. Ron Hubbard said this organization should exist and they should do these films, there was a period of about, I want to say 10 years, a decade at least. That was in the late 70s, early 80s. And we both showed up at this property in 1990. Right. And in 1990, L. Ron Hubbard had shot some of those films with this film team. And
Right.
some of those films were still being shown in Scientology organizations in
Right.
1990.
Right. And let's not forget that a 16-year-old David Miscavige was a cameraman
That's right.
on some of
Yeah,
those early films.
that's right. And that created a little bit of a situation for us because not only did L. Ron Hubbard shoot them, but David Miscavige, the head of Scientology, who is now in
Yeah.
1990, he's the chairman of the board RTC, the most powerful individual within Scientology. And now we're going to redo his work because it was horrible. His work and L. Ron Hubbard's work were atrocious in terms of putting a film together. I was trying to think of something that those films could be compared to.
No, there's no corollary. I
Yeah.
wrote it. I wrote about it in my book. There's no corollary. You can't. It's like I went to a professional film school. I attended 2 film schools, but I graduated from one. And I know how difficult it is for young people to make a film the first time. But in all my years in film school, I never saw anything as bad as those films.
Yeah.
Like there's no corollary. It's like it's a little bit. The closest thing is like children putting on a school play.
I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
if kids in
Yeah.
like if elementary school kids, like guys, just to give you an idea, like if you went into a certain part of the organization, like the part where you walk in, there would be
Right.
a giant sign 10 feet wide and 2 feet high that said reception.
Yeah.
And then you'd go to the next place and it would be like cafe. And it was like they labeled everything in the film because you wouldn't be able to tell what it was because it was a lemonade stand that they used for every single possible different thing, and they just put a different sign on
I
it.
wish I could say you were exaggerating, but I can't.
It was like, I'm trying to think of like an old, like Benny Hill. If you watched a Benny Hill episode from the whenever that was on, the 1970s or 80s, that was miles above the
Yeah.
quality that these
Yeah.
films were.
Yeah. And keep in mind, the highest level they ever aspired to was around what they produced right before I got there and you got there, was what I call the Bad Sweater video, which was We Stand Tall, the one that was parodied on Saturday Night Live, right?
Yes.
That's the highest artistic level that they ever managed to aspire to. So
Yeah, they had literally just shot that before we got there.
yeah.
Or-
That was shot for I think it was for Christmas '89,
Yes.
and then they locked the entire film crew in the galley. They made them go there every day and scrub the grease out of the fryer, and wouldn't let them out until they found somebody who knew how to make films. And then you came up a couple of months later, and and apparently we're making cassettes faster than they could sell them, so they put you in making filmmaking. So
Yeah.
like,
They-
basically, that's what happened.
That
I
is-
still remember, Mark. I just have to tell you, the first recollection I have of you is we were standing, and I'm probably 20 years older than you, but I was like the adult supervision in the room, but we were standing on those sidewalks between the gym, which is the studio, and like the editing area. We're standing out on those sidewalks in there, and Miscavige walked by. And this is the first time I heard him say it. This guy has my initials tattooed on his arm.
Yes.
This guy, I thought that was so annoying.
It was.
I
It
should've
was to
taken
me
that-
as well.
Yeah, it was so weird and awkward. And I should have taken it as a red flag. And he would do that all the time. It was just,
Yeah.
he loved being the most awkward, fucking pushing people down. Whoops, watch my language.
Yeah.
But
Well, yeah, and to be fair, I do have his initials on my
yeah, but
arm,
it's not his initials.
but that's not why I put them there. It's because it
No,
also
no,
stands for
no, it's-
Depeche Mode.
E and an M. That's not his initials.
Yeah.
Let's just take that. And I knew that when I saw him. I'm like, man, this guy's just a little egotist.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Anyway.
It was a funny thing.
It is, yeah. So you're there. They've shot a bunch of these things. And for some reason, and this is where you might have to fill in some of these blanks because this is before I got into the cinematography division. But as far as I understand it, the first film that you were supposed to do was a film that's called TR8, Start, Change, Stop.
It's actually start, change, and stop. Okay.
Oh,
I don't want to.
ooh.
I don't want to.
Let's
Be
not. Let me add that to my note there.
yeah,
Ampersand.
yeah. And start, change, and stop. Yeah, referring to a objective auditing process, which is intended to get a person to look out in the world. Hubbard claimed that objective processes could cure accident proneness, if this, as if that's actually a thing, right? And the film is about a woman whose husband calls an auditor because she's breaking everything, and it's beyond our making of the film. The script, the way he draws this character in the script, it's very typical of Hubbard. He draws her like he had these very strange ideas about women that they should. I don't have the quote here, but about how they should do really their role in life is taking care of men and having children and creating the home and those 1950s misogynistic patriarchal notions are just they're just embedded in Scientology, like even to this day. And it's in this film. Nobody really notices it,
Yeah.
but the wife is this ditzy homemaker, and the husband's like, "Oh my God, I need to call an auditor because
Yes.
her name's Ms. And
Yeah.
she's just
MIZ.
yeah, she's just this goofy woman, and at the end at the beginning she drives a car through the back of the garage, and at the end she's scooting around in a sports car. But that's meant to show not that she's elevated, but how great Hubbard's technology works.
Yes.
I mean, I'm saying all this in hindsight. Like I did not know, really was aware of this when I was shooting it. It's I mean, I knew I didn't like the way he wrote the character. I was offended by it. So.
Yeah, and at the same time, we can't really because L. Ron Hubbard wrote it. We can't really change that without.
No, you're not going to
without.
say. Yeah, can I give her? Maybe she's an attorney.
Yeah, you can't.
Do
We
it.
really weren't even allowed to change the shot descriptions or how the shot list was laid out. If L. Ron Hubbard said
Yeah,
close
yeah.
up, medium shot, wide shot, then we had to
Well,
do that.
but I was allowed. I was actually allowed as long as I shot those, then I could shoot additional shots.
Yes,
But
and
if I
Mitch
shoot,
was the king of a better angle or a two. Let's do this. Should be a two shot. I'm not sure
yeah,
why he said it would be a close up, but so we will shoot his coverage, L. Ron
yeah,
Hubbard's coverage, and then we're going to shoot additional coverage so that it could actually be some sort of
yeah,
artistic process.
yeah. Then we'll shoot the coverage that I learned like in filmmaking 101. It was
Yes.
not brain science. It wasn't that I was a genius. It was just
No, it was,
yeah,
and the other thing I want to say is that we weren't. Not only were we not allowed to change the scene or shot descriptions, but the dialogue was pretty much had to be
oh yeah, no,
followed.
dead on, dead on.
Yeah.
If it said it is, the actor couldn't contract it. He couldn't say it's. He had to say, yeah, it's my fault. If it was, he had to say, it is my, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we had some really good actors who were Scientologists. Like we had Jeffrey Lewis, the late Jeffrey Lewis, which is a really great example. Jeffrey's a guy. He's like Jack Nicholson, but he's not going to say his lines.
Nope.
He's going
He
to rip.
literally. I don't think he ever said his lines on any film that we did with him. I don't think he ever
No,
shot it verbatim.
no, he never did. I mean, he never did. And then he used to do this thing. If he didn't like a take, Jeffrey used to like to scratch his face a lot. He had these little things where he'd rub his face and he'd do
That's
this.
right. He would do.
And if he didn't like the take, he'd go like this and he'd show his finger up his
Yeah.
nose.
Yeah.
So you'd have to yell cut.
Yeah. It'd be like, oh, that it ruined that scene. That's
Yeah.
a dunner.
Yeah, Jeffrey was great. I really liked working with him.
Yeah, he was pretty amazing. And he was definitely one of these character, would you call that a character actor?
Yeah,
Or-
totally.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he was Clint Eastwood's sidekick in all those
Every Which Way But Loose.
Every Which Way But Loose. He did in all those
Yes.
wonderful films. So
Yeah. Speaking of cast, so in this movie, it's really two main actors carry the whole film.
in this
It's
film, yeah, for
it's
sure,
Gary Imhoff, who was a Scientology actor,
still
and
is.
then it was Judy Norton Taylor played.
Yeah, Judy
Liz,
Norton
right?
Taylor from Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah, so Judy Norton Taylor, also a Scientology actress at the time. I'm not sure if she still is.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she is.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I saw her in one of the IS magazines as a big donor.
Yeah.
And
all that.
Judy was not like, she was a jump master. When we did that film, Judy Norton-Taylor had 500 jumps out of an airplane
Yeah.
under her belt. So she was nothing like the character.
Yeah, she was not, and the way her character was, is she would put toast in the toaster and it would blow up. Then she'd grab to get some eggs out of or butter out of the refrigerator, and the door of the refrigerator would come off.
Fall off.
And you know, like she was the husband is essentially breaking down emotionally because she's destroying their entire house.
And then finally he says, "Oh, I need to call an auditor." And so there just happens to be some guy who you could, in the yellow pages, auditor, and the guy shows up with an e-meter, and on the e-meter it has a huge sign that says auditor. So
well, but let's start off. Does the film opens with her crashing through the garage, right?
Yeah. We have
that's the opening scene of the video of the film.
It opens and she crashes in the garage. I have to just add one thing you said about we couldn't change things.
Yeah.
One thing I did change was starting with that film. I didn't like the titles of any of the films because Hubbard had this convention of putting the titles over the beginning of the film, and I always find that annoying. I don't like seeing any films when you're constantly being pulled out of the film. It's either no titles or there's a really cool sequence that they put the titles in. That's kind of how I want to see a film. So I wrote I was just up there, and there was a guy who was a writer up there who was kind of a bit of a handler. He was meant to sort of onboard me on this stuff. And I said, "Hey, can I write a title so I sequence onto this film?" And it was like, and the guy didn't know what to say because it was like, what do I? He says, "Well, okay," because Hubbard said you have to make the film your own, right? And he said, this is one of the ways that they steal your artistic soul.
Yeah.
They tell you to make the film your own, and then they micromanage you like to death. And so it can't be yours, right? And you be micromanaged you because anyway, I think you get the idea. So I proposed a title sequence. Miscavige said, "Yeah, let's do it." So then I added this on. You have it. We could play it.
You want to show it?
Yeah,
let's watch it.
Let me say the music is horrible. I hate the music, and later we got a better composer. But that's the real thing I really hate. Yeah. So this is. Let me just give you the setup. This is this woman, and I just said, well, if I just shoot, she's going to drive into a garage. So if I just back that up and just shoot a sequence of her driving recklessly, and at the end of the film, she's supposed to drive this red sports car. So if I start the film with a little kid who happens to be my son when he was 5, a little kid with a radio controlled sports car, and then she runs that over, then that opening sequence will sort of it'll rhyme with the end sequence. And then you'll see they let me have these. They said, okay, you can have the title sequences. I'm still looking for the rest of them. But this title sequence, it stops where the film starts because those are not allowed to ever leave. So
okay, here we go. Let's load it up. I'll leave us up too, so we can. If you have any comments, you can just comment over the audio.
No problem.
Oh, it's even got the leader. This even got the two pop on it. Doop.
Yeah, this was shot on 35 millimeter film. It was, this is the classic old logo.
Yes.
This is the high def redo.
I don't think no one's ever seen these before. Yeah, this is the first time one of these has ever been played on the internet.
It's a world premiere. I think we're going to show that at the beginning of all these episodes.
Right.
There's my kid. He's so cute. He's a film editor today, by the way.
That's amazing.
He's like 28 years old.
It's a little Shelby Cobra.
Yeah, and we rented a Cobra at the end. The reason I got a Cobra was we then got a Cobra, a replica.
Yeah, a kit car.
Yeah, I couldn't even fit in that thing. I tried to drive it. It was just...
Yeah, so start, change,
and
stop.
I told you.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
That's a cute kid.
Yeah.
Okay, my favorite part is that I don't have a credit on these. Thank God.
No, there's no credits. You just watched. That's the whole credit sequence. That's it. It's done.
There's one more.
Yeah, gold.
Like the entire organization yelled.
Yes.
Cut. Hold on, this is the best part. I guess we should have pushed this more as a world premiere because it really is.
Right? We should have, yeah. And that actress, this is the third time this movie was shot. So that's actually a completely different actress. And
Yeah,
that's
totally.
where, so that's the end,
Yeah.
because the next scene is how the movie opens, where she
Yeah,
crashes, right?
and I couldn't have that because that was part of the actual film.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I saved all these films with the title sequences because they got really good. I mean,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and what I was saying, so it was shot before 1990. Then
Right.
Mitch shot it in 1990
with Judy Norton-Taylor.
with Judy Norton-Taylor and Gary
Right.
Imhoff. But the sets and the costumes, and I think even the cast, was already done before, right? What was done? Weren't the sets
Well,
already in the studio when you got there?
it was sitting in the studio for 9 months. Like the place was such a disaster that somebody was just assigned to go in there and dust it off. When I met with, remember Ted Horner, who was CMO Gold, he was CMO Gold. The CMO is like a senior organization that is in charge of policing and executing Hubbard's orders, or whoever is giving Hubbard's orders. CMO Gold was
Yeah, and CMO stands for the Commodore's Messenger Organization.
exactly.
L. Ron Hubbard fancied himself as a Commodore
Right.
of all of these Sea Org
Well, he was
vessels.
the Commodore. I was the Commodore once too. I was in the bathrobe tub. I had a whole bunch of ducks floating around. Dude, I was the Commodore. I mean, it's
Anyway, so CMO is just is just a management organization, and they're all over the world, and usually they're assigned to either an area or a specific organization. Right. So Golden Era Productions had its own Commodore's Messenger org that was also located at the same property, and they could just come into any part of that organization and sort of boss people around.
Yeah, and they had some real suit cred. CMO Gold was like, whoa, that's the CMO over Gold. You had to, because to work in that organization, you had to know something about photography and filmmaking, and you had to have that. Annie Tidman was CMO Gold for a while. There was some, amazing people, but there is no CMO Gold, no CMO Gold anymore because Miscavige dismantled it.
Yeah.
It doesn't even exist. So yeah, when I met with the CEO of CMO Gold, he showed me all the set renderings. He didn't show me photos of the sets. He said, "What do you think of this?" And I went, "Nah, it's okay." And he said, whatever, while we were talking. Then I came up and I found out that the sets had been there for 9 months. Like nothing, and the crew was all whatever. So they were cleaning dishes, and they let them out to do the bad sweater video.
Yes.
And then because they pulled that off, and then I came up, then we started making films. We were cruising along for a while.
And the only reason I want to mention that is because after that film, Mitch was integrated into the production process, where he would see the casting, he would see the costumes, he would see the set designs. Right. And so this film was done at first, but then by the time we got to the end of the films, this film was the worst one because Mitch didn't oversee all of the production steps.
It was a pre-done package. The casting was done, everything was done, and the main set, which was the living room set in their home, it took up the entire studio. They didn't realize they needed to leave room to get the camera back or to put lights in. And they had no room to do, backdrops or greens or scenics, whatever you want to call it, outside the windows. It was a total mess. It was just like, but I was there to do one film, and I, did everything I could and helped them. And we finished it in 2.5 weeks. That had never been done.
Yeah.
I mean, I've told that story. That was like, and then what happened was David Miscavige went and he put my name personally. He put it on the Cine org board, the Cine division. He put it right below the person who runs it. And just, you could probably explain to your viewers, getting yourself off a int-based org board, taking yourself off, you're not going to do it. It's never going to happen. You're going to have to leave Scientology. You're going to have to say, that's it, I'm done with Scientology. So it took me a long time to work that problem out. I was like, somebody from HCO, one of the other people grabbed me and they said, you have to see this. You have to see this. Elvis, the Jesus has come back or something. And they took me in there and I looked and they showed me the org board and they said, David Miscavige, put your name in the org board. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm screwed. I'm
Yeah,
so
you're
screwed.
never ever
Yeah,
leaving.
it's like if he took a knitting needle and shoved it through a Mitch Brisker doll like voodoo and just pinned it to the board. It's about
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, it's like old luggage. You never get rid of it.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the way the sets were. So when this film was shot in 1990, Golden Era Productions only had a single film studio, and
A
that was
small studio.
it was very small. I want to say it was about. I mean, I would estimate it's probably like maybe 30 or 40 feet wide by
Yeah,
about 50 or 60
it
feet
seemed like
long.
about the size of a basketball court.
Well, yeah. So that's what I was going to get to. So
Yeah, I
when they
thought they called it the gym. I thought it used to be a basketball court.
Well, so what happened was when L. Ron Hubbard said, we're going to shoot these films and you have to build studios and all that, there was a building there that they said, well, this will be where we'll make the studio. And that because Scientology wasn't the one who purchased the property. The
Right.
property was purchased by I think it was called the
Scottish
Scottish
something.
Squattish
No,
Quietude
Scottish.
Retreat.
Yeah, something weird thing like that.
Yeah, the Scottish Quietude Community, or the Scottish
Society. I think it was society.
Quietude Society.
Yeah, it's
And
weird.
when they went to go build this building, they had to get a permit and they had to build the building, and it had to be something. So they called it a gym, and it was basic. It was going to be a basketball court. That's how the sizing was, and that is how
Yeah.
they basically set it up. This is going to be a basketball court, but not a full court, a half court. And so
It was small.
And because it was called the gym, because that's what they were calling it. That's what it was called from even after everybody knew. Oh, Golden Era Productions,
Still
Scientology.
today.
They still called it the gym for the rest of the time.
Yeah.
But it was very, very small, and you could really only fit one small, maybe two small sets, maybe one medium set or two small sets, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, you could. Yeah, it's really because the thing they didn't realize is that you need room outside the set for camera and lighting and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, it was a nightmare. It was really like a total nightmare.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that there was no other studio. So if you were this is the insanity of their system, is that you're supposed to shoot 16 shots a day.
Right.
Well, if you have a set that you've shot on all day long and you're going to shoot on a different set tomorrow, then you would have to have another set loaded in. You'd have to light that set and prep it and prop it and do everything to be able to shoot the next day. But you cannot break down a set until David Miscavige has seen the dailies. So we would shoot for that day. The film would get rushed to Los Angeles. Then it'd get to a lab called Photochem and in Burbank, California. And then they would process it, and then it'd have to come back up, get cut into a reel of the shots that we're going to submit and the shots that we're going to say we're not going to put in there, or alternates or other takes. That whole thing would have to be assembled. And this would be, we're talking with splicing, like
cutting. This is all analog film.
Yeah, cutting film and splicing it and putting together the dailies reel. And then David Miscavige would have to see that and then say, yes, they're approved. And then the set could get broken down.
Could take it up. I don't know. As years went by, they just, even when we had the castle and plenty of room for multiple sets, eventually they just blew that off. They just, plus they had so many people, they could rip a set down, put it back in if they wanted.
Well, we also, by the time we built the castle, we could load 10 sets in there and we could just leave them hot for the whole movie. Yeah, so even if we had an idea or we wanted to go back and pick up a shot, the set would still be there. The lights would all still be there. And it would just be like, we'll just go back over there and shoot it.
Yeah. So, totally.
But in the early days,
survive, Mark. I don't remember.
In the early days, what we would always try to do is we'd try to stagger. So we'd have one day studio shoot and then the next day location. And so we would try to schedule it in a way, or if we had a lot of shots on one set and we might have to pick it up, then we would schedule that for like a Friday. So because Mitch would go home most weekends, Mitch would travel back to Los Angeles and go home because he had a family. Anyway, so
I had other fish to fry.
yeah, he had other fish to fry. So he would come, he would basically arrive to Golden Era Productions either on Sunday night or Monday morning, right?
Right.
And then you'd be there all week long. You'd
Right.
stay at the property during the week in these units that
Right.
were called, this is the weirdest thing. It has nothing to do with rap, but the places where the professionals would stay were called the G units because I'm not sure why they were called the G
I think
units.
I know. I think I know.
Groundskeeper?
Yeah, because I was told that that's where the groundskeepers used to live. But
Okay.
who knows? Who knows?
So either way, we call them the G units. Nothing to do with Fitty. But anyway, but then he would leave on Friday, like Friday afternoon. And and this is also kind of perfect, is that
Okay.
we would have staff meetings on Friday nights.
Yeah.
So Mitch
I could always
essentially,
get out of there for staff meeting.
yeah, at dinner time, it was Mitch was like, boof, out the gate. I'm out.
See you
I'm
later.
done.
Have fun, guys.
And if we had something happen or that was sort of that was the throwaway day because Mitch is going back to LA. So we can't shoot late.
Yeah,
We can't.
But also, you guys had to go to staff meetings. So it
Yeah.
was
And we had to go to staff meetings. So it was
If
sort of
our
like,
day wasn't done, you guys were screwed because you had to go to staff. You're not going to go, oh, no staff meeting tonight. They're still shooting. No.
yeah. Anyway, so that was sort of Mitch's schedule. Then he'd be away for the weekend. And on the weekends at Golden Era Productions, on Saturdays, every single person that worked at that property, L. Ron Hubbard wrote a policy for the Sea Org members at this base specifically that on Saturdays, every single person who works there is supposed to participate in a program of renovations. So it didn't matter what your job was. I was the shoot crew chief and I ran the film unit, but on Saturdays I was an electrician, a roofer, a framer, engineer, whatever it was that you were skilled at, that was your function all day Saturday. And then on Saturday night, we'd listen to an L. Ron Hubbard lecture. The entire crew would file into the dining hall, and then they would listen to an L. Ron Hubbard lecture. And then on Sunday, we'd have a few hours to do our laundry, and then we would work on Sunday. And the film team, because we didn't usually study during the week because we were shooting. We were trying to make the movies.
Right.
And usually in order to get ready for the next day, we'd have to light a set or we'd have to do all these preps to get ready for the next day after, sort of the day had ended at dinner time. We had to do everything else for the next day between dinner and the end of the night. And so on Sundays, we would study. We were supposed to study the whole entire day from lunchtime to the end of the night, and that would be our study for the week. And some of us were also supposed to study a little bit on Saturday, too, to get the total amount that we were supposed to study Scientology. And for the most part, we never did that. So we didn't study during the week and we didn't study on the weekends. And for the most part, the shoot crew just didn't get Scientology counseling or study courses unless we got in trouble. And then that's all we did full time all day and all night. And when we weren't scrubbing, floors or toilets with toothbrushes. So that was sort of our schedule. And daily we would start at 8 o'clock. That's when breakfast was. And then at 8:30, we'd have our morning muster, or like when all the Sea Org members are rounded up and counted, make sure no chickens escaped during the night. And then we'd shoot all day, all morning. We'd break for a half an hour lunch. And usually after lunch, we'd have another muster. And sometimes those musters would be 5 minutes. Sometimes they'd be 45 minutes, depending on who was in trouble and who needed to tell everybody who was in trouble. And so when we would leave break for lunch at 12, Mitch would go off and eat, and he would eat with the other professionals that were there. And then, and sometimes, did you also eat in the main dining room as well?
Well, it was weird. When we first got there, there was a few of us. There was really only me and one other guy. He was a pro Scientologist. He was working in construction. I don't know if you remember him.
Mike Smith?
Yeah, Mike Smith.
Yeah, he was sort of like our GC that would pull all the permits.
Yeah, exactly.
And he didn't do any of the work. He would just be he would just pull the permits and get the inspections, and Sea Org members would do all of the actual construction work.
Yeah, and Mike was on. He'd show up. He'd drive up early in the morning, and he'd go home at night. He drove back and forth. I couldn't do that. It was just like I never would have made it back and forth on so. But yeah, yeah. So what I was saying is, I ate with the pros. Then, so Mike, we had a little table. We ate with you guys in the main dining room, which was kind of cool. You know, it was big, noisy, boisterous, and but then after a while, for some reason, Miscavige moved us all over to this place. Maybe because there were more pros came up, he moved us over to the tavern, right? So
Yes.
then we would eat in the tavern, and then some years later, not long after you left, he was like, "You know what? We need to start treating these guys more like Sea Org members. You know,
Yeah.
screw them. They're all going back into the." But that's when we all started seeing everybody being marched from the
I
hall to the
know
dining room.
that
We
was
never
really,
would have seen that.
yeah. And that's, I think for the most part, that was the reason that you guys needed to be sequestered, is because sometimes things would happen during the meal breaks, or we'd
Yeah,
be on 10 or 15-minute meal breaks. So
right.
we would come in, eat, and be gone. And you guys would kind of just be like, "Hey, how's it going?" Just like
Yeah,
kind of getting going. And we're already in and out.
yeah, no, exactly, exactly. It was, yeah, and why we didn't have to see that. There was enough stuff that already made you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We didn't need to see a bunch of people like wolfing down their food in 2 minutes and then running out the door while we're like taking, wow, gee, a 45-minute lunch.
Yeah. Like that was a luxury lunch, 45 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we don't typically, because we had to wait for you guys to finish all your stuff.
Yeah. So by the time we got out of muster, it was probably an hour break between
Yeah,
stopping work and starting
yeah,
work,
and
usually.
getting back to it.
And then we'd shoot from, let's say, 1-ish to 5 o'clock, and then 5 to 5:30, or 5 to 5:15, or 5 to 5:45, depending on which year it was. We either had 15, 30, or 45-minute meal breaks.
Right.
I don't think any meal breaks were. I think maybe Thanksgiving we'd have a 45-minute meal break.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
I remember 45 minutes to an hour. It was like
Yeah.
people would actually go back to their rooms and dress up
Yes.
and then come back for like a 45-minute dinner because it was such a big deal.
Yes, that's right. We would literally put a tie on for a 45-minute for a
Or
45-minute meal break.
or a bad sweater.
Yeah, or Hermes sweater.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny when you mentioned the tavern. So the tavern, and I totally forgot to mention this, but we should say it, was when they built this studio, the gym, it was themed. So each part of the gym, even the bathrooms, had a theme. So the men's bathroom was Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. So
Very theatrical.
yeah, the stalls were whitewashed fences, and there was a bucket with the paintbrush in it in the head in the toilet.
Yeah,
There's a bucket hanging from the door with a paintbrush in it, and
yeah.
this was, I mean, it's probably still there to this day. Did they? They never tore all that down, did they?
I mean, no. When I was last there, and last time I was in that bathroom because I didn't go in there too often.
Yeah.
Once we left,
Well,
once we moved up to the castle. But yeah, the last time I saw it was maybe 2018.
yeah. So the men's bathroom was Tom Sawyer. The women's bathroom, I think it was. Gosh, I never went in there. It was pink.
Probably,
I think it was like a princess, like what's her name? What's the
Well, it
one
might
who
have
lost
been
the
Alice
slipper?
and- oh, Willie. Oh, Cinderella.
I think the bathroom was Cinderella,
Disney
and
princess.
then what's that?
Disney princess themed.
Yes, it was some sort of princess. To tell you the truth, I do not actually ever remember entering that room, besides just seeing the pink when the door opened.
Yeah.
So, and then right next to the bathrooms was makeup. And makeup had like an Egyptian themed. So it had all these giant pillars with hieroglyphics all over it. And they had these like sheer curtains that would cover the shelves. And it looked like an Egyptian palace. And then I'm trying to think of what costumes was. I think costumes was like, that was the Alice in Wonderland type of
Yeah, I don't even
theme.
remember.
And then camera. No, not camera. Well, yeah, I think camera and sound on the other side of the building. Camera was 20, was it
Yeah, yeah.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea?
Yeah, they had a big diving helmet and like crazy
That's
stuff.
right. So sound, so I think that was both film or sound and camera had this 20,000 leagues under the sea sort of vibe. And they had portholes for windows.
Yeah, yeah.
And
These were little rooms too. They
yeah,
were not
no,
big rooms.
if
These were
you
small.
were in there working, there wasn't room for maybe one or two people to even stand
Yeah,
behind you. It was
yeah,
very tight.
yeah.
A camera was actually kind of big because they had to build the cameras and change mags, and
Yeah, they had equipment and stuff.
they had a
So,
decent. Yeah, that's true. They had a lot of road cases, so they had a little bit of storage.
yeah.
And then on the other side of the building, there was sort of like a loading area. And that was the other thing that always bothered me as the shoe crew chief, is that none of these things that I've explained to you were on the same level. So when they built the building,
Right.
the concrete cracked and broke so many times. By the time you got into the studio, it was 4 feet higher, maybe not even more. I think it was 8 feet higher than the sidewalk outside. So you would actually go up a ramp or steps to get into the building. And then where audio and camera were one level, then you'd go up even more stairs to get into the main studio. And they had a very old mechanical soundproof door that had like a giant, it,
Oh
it
my
was almost
God.
like a hook,
It was
like a,
homemade. It was
yeah,
totally homemade.
it was literally the most ghetto-tastic doorknob that somebody just welded together poorly.
Yeah.
And it would physically go like, it would make when you came in and out of that door, it literally sounded like somebody was breaking into a car. It was like with this metal grinding against metal. And the sound, the walls of this studio, I think I'm probably underestimating that they were about 4 feet thick to make it soundproof. They
Yeah, but
were,
it wasn't soundproof, even with
yeah,
all that.
even with all that, there
Yeah.
were light and air leaks everywhere. So that
Yeah.
the area that you would load the sets into was the
Yeah.
biggest offender of letting
Yeah.
nonsense in, because
Yeah.
the sets crew and everybody who's trying to prep for the next day's shoot, they have no time to be there to prep. So every little second that we're not on a bell shooting. So when we would start recording, we'd be on a bell, or, a red wigwag would be going. And then everybody would need to, just the sets and props guys would like be being quiet, like don't breathe heavy, that like
Oh
just sit
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And invariably they'd knock over a hammer, they'd knock over a wall, and we'd be in the middle of it taking you to see this. Be like, cut, cut, cut. And be like, hey, you guys got to shut up in there. And then, so it was a giant cluster. That's the only way to say it was a very delicate situation that could just be blown to bits at any point during the day, because we're at a Sea Org base, and at a Sea Org base, if something bad happens or there's some sort of problem that's an emergency, everything stops on the property and everyone has to go deal with it.
Right.
So we could be in the middle of doing a shoot, and then it would be like somebody would run in, oh my gosh, blah, blah, blah is happening. And then it would be like, okay, we're done. We can't shoot anymore. Or the power. Oh, that would be in the summer, the power would go out like every other week. There'd be a power outage, and you just be like, we're done.
Yeah.
And because they use so much electricity that the feed to the property would be overtaxed, and Edison, Southern California Edison would just say, like, you're cut off. Just throw the breaker.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, they never solved that, even when we built the castle, and they upgraded, generators and all kinds of stuff. They never solved that problem. It was the big engineering problem, but.
And now,
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, wow. I've just
this is going to be the one where we're going to kind of set up the whole stage. So the other thing that would happen is Golden Era Production was created to make these films. And L. Ron Hubbard himself saw a thing happening where Scientology was having these conventions and events, And those events, everyone would stop everything they were doing in Scientology, whether it was in a Scientology organization or whether it was Golden Era Productions or whether it was management. Everyone would stop doing their jobs and go do these conventions. And it sort of wrecked everything else that kind of was getting some momentum. So L. Ron Hubbard said, do not do these events. They are not allowed to be done in Scientology. Okay, well, when L. Ron Hubbard dropped his body, as they say in Scientology, filled with psychiatric drugs and of all kinds of craziness, in 1986, David Miscavige, it didn't take him many years to decide, you know what we should do? We should do these events, because he saw it as basically a very, very optimum fundraising opportunity, as well as an impetus to get stuff done. So they have these 7 or 8 different events that they would have throughout the year. And those events had makeup, costumes, sets, props, camera, and lighting. Oh, guess what else has all those things? The film team. Oh, so they had a whole nother set of people? No. The same people that produced the films also had to produce the events. So
Plus, if I could just add, there's the broadcast aspect to it.
Yes.
Like, it's going to be recorded in a broadcast truck. There's that whole make a TV show type of deal.
Yeah. The same people who work on the Super Bowl work on the Scientology events in terms of the camera, broadcast trucks, audio. Like they're doing the Super Bowl and then they're doing a Scientology event. Like they would literally be coming back from the Super Bowl in February and we'd have an event in early March, like the first or second week in March. Yeah, and they would have just done the Super Bowl a few weeks earlier.
You'll have the Super Bowl graphics loaded into the truck.
Yes, like they would sometimes still have Super Bowl stuff in the equipment.
Yeah, I got to let the dog out.
It's okay. I'll keep going. So the other thing that would happen, so if you have all of these crew that are supposed to be shooting films, well, when the event is getting closer, there's preps. You've got the lighting, what they called the head lighting guy in the Sea Org. They call it the chief gaffer. And so my chief gaffer was also the lighting director of the event. So he has to work out lighting plots and figure out where his cues are going to be. And he has to do all that prep work, which could take a month or 2, maybe even more. And to get ready for that, well, he'd have to do all that after we were done shooting for the day. So some of these people would shoot all day long. And then when the day was over at 11 or 11:30, whatever we were doing at the time, then they would start their event job and do that till 2 or 3 in the morning and then go home and get some sleep and come back in the morning at 8. So, but the constant struggle was there needs to be, and when we would not get all the shots that we were supposed to get, like there'd be a week and there'd be no shots in the can. That was our statistic. The film crew all had the exact same statistic, which was shots in the can. And we were supposed to get 16 high quality shots in the can each day. Well, there'd be a week with no cans and or no shots in the can. And then it'd be like, well, yeah, everyone's at the event. They're in Clearwater. It'd be like, well, that's no excuse. You can't, like, what do you mean there's no excuse? They're not here. How am I supposed to get a shot with no camera and no lights? And so this happened the entire 15 years that I was there. Was why are you guys not doing this? Oh, well, we're on the event. And David Miscavige would be like, well, you need to have 2 separate crews. And so there would always be a push to double the crew, like to have duplicity on both sides. And somehow that I don't know if after I left in 2005, I don't know that ever finished, that ever kind of culminated. They moved everything to Los Angeles and then Golden Era had no job.
Well, yeah, yes and no. I mean, okay. I can tell you if you want to know.
Sure.
I was there when the whole thing happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, he basically banned new people from coming to the base, new staff, and said, but you also have to have a second, an event crew. So it was the biggest, like, how could you do that? How can you say you can't bring people? You know, they were constantly trying to do it. They never pulled it off. Keep in mind that L. Ron Hubbard ordered gold to be put together to make these films. And then David Miscavige cross-ordered it. In other words, countered that order by making events. So it was chaos. The best way I could describe it was the most insane kind of whiplash that you've ever seen people go through, where they'd be in the middle of a film, and then it breaks on, over here, do this. So for years and years, Miscavige was telling me, I have to get events out of here. I have to get events out of here. I'm sick and tired of it interfering with shooting. So finally he sets S&P up. And he gets the events starting to be produced there, so Gold can keep making films, and they got plenty of films to do because they're making films for the network, and they're redoing tech films.
And
right?
SMP is Scientology Media Productions, which is essentially a carbon copy of Golden Era Productions in Los Angeles.
Except it was designed by Gensler Architects.
Yeah, it was
instead of by. Yeah.
And there weren't Sea Org members putting these buildings and renovating these buildings.
The Sea Org members, you know what they did do?
Yeah.
They chipped all of the, what do you call it, between
stucco?
the bricks?
Oh,
yeah,
grout.
They did that too. The grout.
Yeah.
And they repointed them, I think it's called.
Yep.
All the bricks, and then there's these incredible, like from the 20s, the teens, these like metal mullion windows, like factory windows that had about, like 30 coats of paint on them.
Yeah.
They stripped all the paint off down to the metal and polished them. The screws on those windows were brass, and they were coated with 70, 90 years of paint. Now they're like, so they did all that stuff.
Yeah.
They,
restoration or demolition is Sea Org members can do that because it's time intensive and they're not paying.
It's really impressive. And you guys did that, and they're like, yeah, we're really proud of it. But yeah, they did that, and they're but this is the crazy part. For years and years and years, Miscavige is saying, I got to get the events out of here so that Gold can just make films. So then he gets it out of there finally.
Yeah.
And he's been saying to me privately and to other people, but I heard him say this for years, like, yeah, I'm going to open a new studio and we're going to do broadcasts, and I'll have my own media, facility so that I can really get back at all the people who've been bad to me on the press. I'll get back at them. But you kind of have to have an audience to do that.
Yeah.
And he didn't have an audience. So what is he gets it out of there, which is what he intended to do. And then he tells Gold, you guys screwed up so badly that I had to spend $100 million to buy another studio, when it's what he said he was going to do the whole time, but he couldn't leave there without
sticking it to him.
Yeah, really sticking it to him. And that, I tell you, that really pissed me off because I thought they were going to be glad, but they
It's funny that you say that, because the whole time we were at the base, as soon as we were talking about this studio called the Gym, and we shot with that studio until I want to say 1995. That was pretty much where everything was shot.
Is that when we went to Norton, 95?
That's right. So in 1995, 1996-ish, there was an Air Force base called Norton Air Force Base, and it had been decommissioned by the government, and it was essentially gifted. A large portion of it, or the portion that we were using on it, was gifted to the Morongo Indian tribe.
Chumash, I'm not sure.
Either way, it was in Norton, whichever. It was gifted to a Indian reservation. So we were paying the government for the property at first, and then we were paying an Indian tribe, and
but let me just interject here, because I'm sorry to interrupt, but what happened was because that was on native land.
Yes.
And the treaty was, if the government ever holds the land to be obsolete, it reverts back to the Indians.
That's
so
right.
There was a big deal because there was a consortium of business people. They're like, whoa, this is an airport. We're not going to let the tribe's not going to get the airport.
Yeah.
This is, what can we get? What can we give to them? So the tribe ended up they had a motion picture facility there, because the Air Force motion picture, there was an Air Force motion picture unit.
Yeah.
There was two in Southern California, one there and one in Hollywood, believe it or not, in the Hollywood Hills. And so then the Indians got it, and they were our landlords. And did you ever meet them, Mark?
I did actually, and
They came out and visited us.
yeah,
Remember?
and no, it was. I'm pretty sure it was the Morongo Indians.
Yeah, it could
That
have
is
been. It could have been. Yeah.
that is the tribe there
You
in
know,
that area.
now that you say it, I think you're right. And they
But
had casinos. They were like rich, man.
they were
like,
ballers, and they also had the building that we were using was where like the films that had cameras in them would dump their film mags, and then that's where they'd all get processed. So they actually had a film laboratory. They had screening rooms, and it was a fully set up facility from the 1950s/60s. So
yeah, but still, it was designed to withstand a nuclear attack. And it was so quiet that you could take off like an F-16 could take off on the runway 100 yards away,
and we wouldn't hear it.
You would not. Nobody was doing that, but you wouldn't hear it.
Yeah, it was a film studio next to a runway that could land like the space shuttle could land there. Yeah. It was not a small runway. No. And we had the walls were about, I want to say a foot to two feet.
No,
thick.
Mark, the door was did you close the sound door?
Yes.
It was 2 feet thick of cement, and it fit into the studio walls. And,
yes.
And it had this massive machine. Remember where you
oh yeah. If the door broke, it was like, well, the door's broken. There's no let's push it open. If it didn't work, that was it. It was closed. And there was a time where it was broken. It might have been closed for 3 months. We just couldn't open it. We didn't know how to fix it or what. Yeah. So, but there was 2 of those. So there was an interior door, and then there was an air, like a 4-foot hallway that was around the entire structure.
Right.
And then there was another door that was just as thick. And there was no air conditioning. In order for us to move in, they had to do many months of asbestos abatement.
Right.
And then we were not allowed to use anything besides the studio we had. We had a Studio A, which is a pretty decent sized studio.
Right.
And
way bigger than what we had, that's for sure.
Way bigger. And then there was a small little studio called Studio B. And even that studio was about the same size as the studio we had been using at the base for 5 years.
Right. The little studio.
And so because there was no air conditioning, and we basically had power and water. That's all we had at that facility.
They might have done asbestos abatement on the studio, but they did not do pest abatement.
No,
when you went to the bathroom there, you chased away the scorpions and the black widow.
Oh my God! Remember, Mitch?
It was crazy.
Okay, I take it back. There were no bathrooms. There was oh my goodness, I can't even believe I forgot this. The building proper, there were no bathrooms. No. The part where the bathrooms were, we weren't allowed to access. It was up this hall, up a staircase and down a hallway. And that's where the film laboratory and the film lab and all that were located. And we didn't have access or rent that because they never did the asbestos abatement up there. So we weren't really even allowed to go over there. So there was a giant parking lot, and on the other side of the parking lot, there was like a sets and props shop.
Yeah, and like an outbuilding.
An outbuilding. And in that building, there was one of these, I put it at the quality of gas station bathroom that's in the shop. That's in the shop part, not the one that you get to go to use as a public. I'm talking about the ones the mechanics use all day, every day, and they haven't cleaned the toilet in 72 years. Right. It wasn't as good as that. Yeah. It was like, if we had actors there, I mean, it got so bad. I want to say that Mitch basically said, this is ridiculous. We're bringing professional actors here, and we're asking them to cross over into Deliverance to go to the bathroom. Okay. So it was so horrible. Like you could probably get bit by a black widow popping a squat.
I'm surprised that there wasn't any serious damage. And I mean, It got so bad. We have a thing called a hygiene report. Remember that? One of the many reports.
Yes.
So I
Out
thought,
hygiene.
yeah, and I was not the report writer. I was
He
just
was
like,
not.
no, I was like, you could do whatever the hell you wanted. I'm not going to write a report on you because I don't got time. And plus, if you don't, plus I might end up doing the same thing you just did. So what the hell? But I did turn in an out hygiene report, and to make sure there was enough insects, my kids, they were small then, they had a bunch of little rubber critters that looked like centipedes and scorpions and spiders. And I dressed the whole bathroom with these. And then I shook the still camera a little bit so it was a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
So it looked totally real. And then I turned it on.
It was,
report.
it was horrible. But so at a certain point, instead of having this horrible bathroom, we upgraded to porta potties.
Yeah, we had porta potties.
And so there was a porta potty outside of the studio that you could just walk out the studio door, and there was just in the middle of the parking lot there was a shitter. And
I think that they brought in some portable air conditioning at one point.
Yes, we did have to bring
yellow
in the
tubes. And
these portable kind of like trailered air conditioners were parked outside, and because the studio was soundproofed, we had to I don't know what the right word is. We had to compromise that seal to put the air conditioning tubes in. Yeah. So now we had a direct access to planes taking off and landing, because now we created these giant ducts that went from inside the studio to outside. So sometimes if there was a lot of airport traffic, we'd have to turn the air conditioning off. Yeah. And close the doors and move the hoses. Oh my God.
And then we'd turn it on and we'd all go crawl inside the yellow tubes were like 4 feet in diameter. We would literally crawl inside of them.
Well,
we were so hot.
It was the middle of the Inland Empire. Right. The name of the town was Highland. That was the actual town.
It's in Loma Linda. But
is that where it was?
It was between Highland and Loma Linda.
Okay.
Like that's where it is.
It was typically about 100 degrees there.
Oh, at least. And it was very warm.
And because the building was all concrete, so it would keep in whatever was inside. Well, if anyone who's been on a film set knows, back in the 90s, we got a lot of lights, 10Ks, 5Ks, 1Ks. When you start turning on all these, a 10,000 watt light, it's going to generate some heat. And there was really no exhaust. We had no way to get air out. We only could bring the cold air in. And it was very trying. And the worst part, it was embarrassing, because we had the carpet was whatever the carpet was when we got there. Somebody might have put a new roll down, but it was the thinnest, cheapest blue carpet you could get from, fell off the truck carpet wholesale. And I think we might have put a coat of white paint on the walls, and that was it before we moved in. We didn't do much. And the food that we would get would be from Golden Air Productions. Yeah, so in the morning, what?
They truck it in, the food.
Yeah. In the mornings, they would make our breakfast and we'd eat that there before we left, or they would, and they'd give us like hot pans for lunch. And most of the time it was just cold cut. So it was bread, cheese, and beef. And it was, we used to, I used to call it rainbow beef and sweaty cheese. What's for lunch? And I would just say rainbow beef and sweaty cheese, because by the time lunch, there was no air conditioning in the area where we would eat. And you'd be like, okay, we're going to break for lunch. And everybody run in there and just be like, oh boy, how long has this been sitting here?
Yeah, and the people that arranged all that, specifically, I'm not going to mention names, John DeVries.
JDV.
JDV, they never came to the location.
Oh, never. And that was one of the
never had to experience it. And I was always trying to grab that dude.
Yes.
Like, no, you need to come out there and you need to have lunch with us just one day.
Yeah, I remember the guy that was in charge of logistics, the studio and the food and getting stuff there and back was his job. And he did it all remotely. So somebody would, oh, someone's leaving to come to the studio. Hey, can you take the food? Well, I'm not going to leave until 10 o'clock. Okay, fine. But then I got to go to the lumber yard and I got to go here and I got to go there and I got to pick this up. And then I go, no problem, as long as it gets there by lunch. And so 1:30 rolls around and here comes the sweaty beef and rainbow cheese out of the back of a pickup truck that's been rolling around the Inland Empire for 4 hours. And you're just like, oh, yikes. And the bread is like, and you're just like, oh, wow. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
It's amazing the details you remember, Mark. Now, that area, Loma Linda, it's one of the best teaching hospitals in the world is there. Surprisingly, we're in this desolate, very economically depressed area, yet Loma Linda is a very vibrant community of Seventh-day Adventists. And it also happens to be, and you guys can look this up, there's a documentary right now on Netflix called The Blue Zones, How to Live to Be 100. And so these zones, there's, I don't know, 5 or 6 of them in the world. They're where they have the most people who live to be 100 or older. And there's like one in, I don't know, Tunisia maybe. There's one Okinawa in Japan, the Caucasus in Russia, and Loma Linda, believe it or not,
Wow.
is one of the blue zones. So I could take off because I got a longer lunch, and because Seventh-day Adventists are really food freaks. It's one of the reasons they live to be so long. So I could drive into the town 20 minutes away, and they have some really good, healthy restaurants, or I wouldn't have survived. Anyway.
Yeah, and
sometimes I brought food back for some of the guys. So.
Well, and also I think after a little while, it was sort of, listen, this is whenever something was not proper, that how it would make Scientology look, it was out PR, so out public relations.
Right.
And so it would be like, hey, we have to, usually it was your assistant, her name was Lisa, and she was sort of the voice of reason for being able to get something that was considered like frou-frou or a waste, which would be food for professional actors.
Right.
That would be looked at as like, why are we spending $50 a day on food for some actors? It'd be like, because we get rainbow beef and sweaty cheese and you can't feed that to a normal human for lunch every single day. So she would usually order food like from a nearby restaurant or something, and she'd get you food. And so she'd put that order in at 11 o'clock. So right when we'd break at noon, it would be like, okay, Mitch is, and it was all, forgive me, but it was usually Mexican was a very routine fare.
Because I could live on Mexican food.
Yeah, so chips and salsa, some
absolutely.
Yeah, it was like the whole spread. And so Mitch and the actors are eating what arguably is food with taste. And we're in the kitchen drinking bottled water and rainbow beef and sweaty cheese.
Well, we really tried to get a food truck and a person as a caterer. No, because you could actually buy used food trucks pretty cheap. And,
it was not that's one of the most kind of odd things about that place is they have this gosh, I don't know what you call it when you don't want to spend $1, but it ends up costing you $50 because
you call it a false economy.
Yes, a false economy because they think, well, because we're not going to feed these guys, then we'll save $50 or $20 or $5 or whatever it was. But then meanwhile, you got a whole bunch of people that aren't too happy about doing anything, and they might
have
not
no
be
energy.
They might not be as effective as if you just pop for an extra $2 for food.
If you go to, like, even on a low budget film, when I went to visit a couple of times at Dave's invitation, I went to War of the Worlds, right? When they did that, I went and spent a few days on set.
Yeah.
You're talking about like the caterer, like it's like last year's Iron Chef is like catering for Spielberg, but even on a cheap film, the food is really decent. I mean, they're bringing in a catering truck because they know people, you feed them really good. They're going to want to get back to work. They're going to be happy, and it's really worth it. But I think the problem was because, Mark, remember, according to Hubbard, what's the basis of morale?
Production.
Yeah, what does eating have? If you're eating, you're not producing.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't actually think I've read any Hubbard policies regarding food preparation for Sea Org members,
No.
but I do know from being on the financial planning and being on the executive committee and these the body, the kind of Sea Org
Right.
management body that plans how much money they're going to spend based on how much money they got. So if Golden Era Productions made $300,000 a week, it would get divvied up by division on who
Right.
got to spend what, and a representative from each division would have to sort of like fight for their section. So somebody's not getting what they want. Probably all divisions are going to get about 50% about what they need, and in order to get that 50%, they
Yeah.
got to fight for it. Like
Yeah.
it's like a battle. Financial planning every week was a battle, and so we didn't the representative for the cinematography department was not the best rep for us. So sometimes our cost would get cut, but the food allocation, I'm pretty sure for the entire 15 years I was there, it was sort of determined that it was $1 per person per day.
Oh God.
So if you had 300 people, then you just multiply that by the amount of days, and that was your food allocation budget. And that's what they had. And all of the organizations of the property that had different amounts of people, and they would all have to chip in X amount of dollars by X amount of people. And
Right.
that's how those guys got food. But I want to say the last time I looked, maybe a decade ago, prisons spend $1 per prisoner per meal per day.
Right.
So they're spending 3 times as much money on food
Right.
as the Sea Org. So
Yeah, that's why when they're making you wrong for wanting to leave the Sea Org by saying you're going to be flipping burgers, you're like,
yeah, and
this would be so much better than this.
I know, and they have this really weird line they say, which is like, "I can't believe he complained about the food. We have a 5-star chef."
Oh yeah.
Okay, if you give a 5-star chef a package of ramen and some ketchup, that's what he's cooking up. Okay, he's not.
Yeah.
He can't manufacture food. He has to prepare.
Yeah.
He has to use what they
Yeah,
purchase.
and sometimes the food at the base was decent. I mean, we got
Sure.
organic food that was grown by children at the ranch.
Yeah. Well, we got olives and some fruit and vegetables. But I do want to say this. It wasn't even that the food was necessarily bad. It's just they didn't have a system for preparing food that needed to go an hour and a half into another town for lunch for us. They just didn't.
Right. No, it was really the location services were so abysmal.
Yeah. It was
just
essentially.
horrible.
Yeah. It was essentially, we can give you cold cuts, or we can give you what we ate for dinner yesterday that will be cold.
Yeah, there was no accommodation, there was no concept of how you could do location services. It was absolutely horrible. And the other thing was if there was a location shoot was really far away,
Yeah.
no way anybody was going to be sent there ahead of time to stay over the night in a hotel, which is how normally would be done. You're going to get up at 2 a.m. and you're going to drive there all day long, and you're going to work. You're not going to sleep. And then they're going to ferry to you fresh drivers to drive you back, who would be ordered to sleep during the day.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't be a zombie and they could drive you back. And that's how they would avoid. I mean, it's against labor laws.
We didn't. I mean, I was the driver for the entire time that I was the shoot crew chief.
Right.
And so we would drive through the night to get to a location, shoot all day, and then drive through the night to get to the next location or get somewhere we were going to stay, and then drive. So when we were shooting certain films, there might be a week where I might have had 4 or 5 hours of sleep for the entire week. And I'm driving a 15 passenger van that's got 19 people in it and about $400,000 worth of camera gear. Okay. So we jammed into those vehicles. When we went somewhere, I used to call it the Beverly Hillbillies shoot team. It literally was like the opening scene from the Beverly Hillbillies, where you've got a truck and it's got equipment that you would think is going to fall out while you're driving down the highway.
Yeah.
But there's, 72 bungee straps or ropes holding it all in there, like the frickin' Beverly Hillbillies.
Also had that trailer, which
Yes.
was insanely dangerous. But The
Oh, you mean
that flat trailer thing that they put the crane on and stuff.
oh, the flatbed.
Yeah, it was like a flatbed trailer.
Yes, we had a box truck. We had
Yeah.
a box truck. Oh yeah, this was also our fleet. When Golden Era Productions was like kind of like, hey, we're gonna do awesome stuff, and I think it was like I want to say 1986, 1987.
Right. Before we were there.
Yeah, they bought a bunch of stuff. They bought a truck, and they bought a Dodge. There was a Dodge pickup truck, which was the camera truck, and it was I want to say it was a 1973 Dodge pickup.
I think
like
it had 200,000 miles on it when they bought it.
Yeah, it was used.
Right.
The grip truck that we had, which we had all the lighting and C-stands and grip equipment, that was also from the early 70s. And then the newest acquisition was like a Chevy dually that we had, and the dually I want to say was like an 89 or something like that. And that was like, dude, we got basically a brand new truck over here. This thing's from 1989, this is 1995, by the way, what we're doing. And so we would have those vehicles, and then usually, so we'd have the grip truck, the camera truck, and then we'd have the dually, and then we'd have a 15-passenger van. So that's how I knew we had about 20 to 30 people, because the 15-passenger van was always full of 15 people, or we'd take a seat out and that's where all the camera gear were. And then we had the grip truck with 2 or 3 people in it, the dually with maybe 5 or 6 people in it. And then we'd have, you'd come in your own personal car. But I think that was pretty much our mobile squad that went to every single location. And then sometimes when we started doing more and more locations, it was like, hey, we can't just have the talent sitting on the side of the highway, to change into. We need to have a place.
The back of the grip truck.
Well, I know. Yeah, they would literally change in the back of a box truck with no lights, holding onto a rack of lights, and you'd be putting pants and stockings on.
Yeah. Sometimes we get a motorhome, but it just depended. It was.
Well, do you remember? So when I showed up, it was like, hey, we got to overhaul and get these guys new people, new stuff. So when I showed up is when we came with the dually. That was in 1995, 96.
Yeah.
We got the Chevy dually. And with the dually, the only reason we got the dually is because we got a honey wagon. We got a honey wagon. And the honey wagon was Goldie Hawn's honey wagon.
Right. No, I completely forgot about that. It was completely run down. It was a total
It was the biggest piece of junk, but it was a honey wagon, and it was Goldie Hawn's. Right. So whenever anybody would come, and I don't know what Goldie Hawn was doing in 1997, but whenever somebody would come to one of our shoots, it'd be like, oh yeah, you can go over to the honey wagon. And then as soon as you get in there, somebody would say like, hey, did you know this used to be Goldie Hawn's honey wagon? To be like, nobody cares. Why do you guys keep telling everybody that? No one cares that Goldie Hawn changed in here on 4 episodes of Laugh-In 1979. Exactly. And that is literally when this thing was from. It was no way it was from early or later than the 80s. It was a very old it was a very old travel trailer, but it
needed a dually.
It needed a 5th wheel attachment to haul it. Right. So that's how we got the dually. And we tried to never ever haul this thing anywhere, because invariably someone would crash it, or we'd crash into something or hit something or park on or crash back into. It was just like whenever we took this thing anywhere, either the dually would get damaged or the trailer would get damaged, or the only person who could drive the dually wasn't if you got into an accident, you weren't allowed to drive anymore. So you'd be off. It was called off the road. So there was like one guy who could drive the dually with the trailer. Like you had to have I want to say you had to have a Class C to drive that thing because it was so long. And so he was the only one who was authorized to do that. And if he went off the road, that was Shark. His name was Paul Sarkany, or we all called him Shark. And if Shark was off the road, it was just like, well, we can't take the trailer, and be like, where are they going to change? We have to change it back in the grip truck like we used to do. It's just like that. It is what it is.
Yeah.
They could change at the gas station.
Yeah. Starbucks was the official supplier of restrooms for Golden Era Productions.
Yeah. And I remember we're gonna wrap up in 6 minutes to do questions, because otherwise we'll never get to them.
Yeah, we never.
I remember we shot this video. It was a music video that we shot in downtown Los Angeles, and it was like the right way to be is to be, or the way something happiness. I can't remember the music video.
A little context. It was We Are the Auditors. Was it?
Nope.
It was the one we shot on the bridge before the old 6th Street Bridge in downtown LA.
6th Street, and we shot a bunch of long.
What is happiness? Something like that.
I can't remember. I can't remember the name, but we shot with a guy, and his name was Jack Maxwell, and he was an actor.
Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah, I'm actually. I think I might even be friends with him on Facebook. I don't think he has any idea who I am. I just like things that he posts, and probably one day he's going to be like, "Dude, who are you?" And I'll be like, "I shot a music video with you in downtown LA 47 years ago."
Oh my God, Jack Max, a blonde guy, good looking.
Yeah, like a total stud.
Yeah.
Anyway, the thing I remember that I could never get out of my mind is that he bought us Starbucks.
The whole crew.
Yeah, like he's just buying everybody Starbucks, and I think he realized that we didn't have any money, so we could, because he went and got a Starbucks, and everybody was just like, "Oh," and he was like, "You guys want something?" Everybody be like, "Oh, no, I'm fine, I'm good." And then, and then I think he realized, oh, they're not allowed to ask me to buy them a Starbucks,
right?
And he ended up buying us all Starbucks, and I thought, that guy just must have spent about $50 on Starbucks. Yeah. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe this is so embarrassing. And it was after that I started to really lobby for food like cash, petty cash. And it was sort of like, you know what? If you're going to send us to a location and you're not going to send us food, then we have to be able to buy lunch, because now we have the talent are buying us food, because they can see we've got fucking holes in our clothes, and we don't have a pot to piss in, and we're in downtown Los Angeles, and a coffee and a sandwich is $18.
Yeah.
That's half a week pay.
Yeah, I remember when, and this was late, like maybe like 2017, 18, it got up to $6 a person for lunch.
Yeah.
So, and so what they would do is, their solution was a bunch of them would go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
And they'd buy like loaves of bread and they would just make lunch, because you could actually kind of pull it off that way. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and it was ridiculous that we never did that before. It was sort of like,
but that's a smart thing to do.
But it was nobody's job, so nobody ever did it.
Exactly. Yeah, no kidding, man. Not long after I started working there, I bought the crew. There was only about 15 of us, but I bought everybody an ice cream cone. Yeah, that was just like a miracle, and I didn't realize that. I walked into the ice cream place and they were all hanging out outside, and so then I said, "Hey, just give me 15 ice cream cones." And I walked out and I said, "Go get your ice cream cones," right? And they were like, "Huh?" And it was like crazy, and I didn't realize like they had to all go to HCO and tell them that I bought them ice cream.
Yeah, you have to do, I think it's actually called a gift report. If somebody gives you something in the Sea Org, you have to report it.
Yeah, it could make sure that they're not like trying to curry favor with you and like, or be an external influence or something.
I was just going to say, it was external influence. It's like, so even if your mom sent you $100 for Christmas, you had external influences, because they could twist and rot your brain with cash from the outside.
Yeah, because apparently people that join the Sea Org are very easily corruptible.
Yes.
So let me tell you, they might have been fooled and tricked because of their idealism and their really desire to help humanity.
Yeah.
But they're not easily corruptible, I can tell you that. So.
And oddly enough, not really that money motivated, because you don't really have any time to spend money. So what do you really need money for?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's what's going on in your head when you're like, how much is a Starbucks? You're like literally looking at the price and you're going like, I think I've got $3.20. I don't even have enough for a grande here. I know. And that's all I have. It's Tuesday and we're not getting paid till Friday. Okay. And I've got 18 cents left over for today.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we covered a lot of kind of
We
setting
did.
the scene. I'm gonna just show this picture real quick. So we've got
Okay.
so this is from a video
I was worried you were going to show a picture of me with my ponytail.
No. I was
Hey.
this is in that video that was shot telling everybody how awesome Golden Era Productions
Yeah.
is. And I like how they have these, like, this is how the scripts are. The scripts are maybe 20 pages, double-sided.
Yeah, they don't look like this.
Yeah, not all of them together would fill one of these books, okay?
Yeah, no, I think all of, because I had a binder of them in my office. And I'm going to be
You think maybe
literal
one,
here.
it would be as big as one?
I would say maybe 2 or 3.
Okay.
That would be it. But
So on
look
the...
at that.
Yeah, and so on the left, it's TR1, TRs in Life, and then it goes through all of the TR films, and then when it gets to the ultimate TR's beingness, that's TR16, right? Or TR15.
Yeah.
TR15.
No, TR16 is beingness. TR15 is the one, what is TR?
Yeah, the different TR courses and their criticisms. Yeah. Okay, so yes, TR16, and then Man the Unfathomable, right there, like kind of like right of center. Man the Unfathomable is EM1, and then it goes all the way through to EM10 and then EM10A.
Yeah,
and then there's EM9 and EM9A and EM2 and 2A. Those are the ones, it's just a part of the film that plays on a loop, basically.
Yeah, and I just have to add that these films, you could only see them if you were enrolled on particular training courses, except for EM1, which was called TRs in Life. EM1 was Man the Unfathomable.
Yeah, TRs in Life is YTRs.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, there was TRs.
Oh no, TR1 is TRs in Life. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it's TR1. So the 2 that had a 1, EM1, TR1, those were shown in film rooms. Like they drag you off the street on Hollywood Boulevard and show it to you. That it had to be a really scary experience, especially Man the Unfathomable. I have to say, TR1 was a film in black and white. We'll talk about this sometime.
Yes.
Yeah. But,
well, we'll talk about it when we get to TR1. So today we talked. The only reason I'm showing you this is because that's essentially how many films there are. So today we did Start, Change, Stop, which is TR8. So do we want to figure out which one we're going to do next? Which one was next? So after Start, Change, Stop was...
Which one did we shoot next?
Yeah.
It was either the first, the original, well, it had been shot partially once before, the solo film, the solo auditor film.
That's right.
With Katie Mitchell. It was either that or it was Upper Indoc TRs. I don't remember.
It was Upper Indoc TRs.
Yeah, that was next.
Upper Indoc TRs was next, then the solo auditor with Katie Mitchell.
And then we all went on the Bhutan Death March and produced a gold video for the Maiden Voyage.
Well, yeah. So that's the other thing we forgot to tell it, and then we'll get to your questions, guys. So if you've got questions or super chats or whatever, we're going to get to those in a few minutes. So in addition to doing the films that we just listed here, and I'll take this off now, in addition to doing the films, in addition to doing the events, at every single event, David Miscavige would play anywhere from 3 to 5 video presentations that would also have to be shot. And those were almost always location videos. So when those needed to be shot, they would kind of cherry pick people from the shoot team. So you'd lose a gaffer, a sound guy, a makeup or talent person, a costumes person, and a camera person would just go poof, and they were off shooting one of these location videos. Right. So in addition to your job is to do this, and you're not supposed to do anything else. Except for this other job, which you do when we do events. And when we need to do this third job, we're just going to kind of cherry pick some people randomly from your team, depending on who is allowed to leave the property. Because if you have a person on the team who's thinking about leaving the Sea organization, they're not allowed to go on location. They're not allowed to leave the property to go to a shoot. So you have a film crew that's shooting, but then if you were going on location, then different people would have to switch jobs because that person wasn't allowed to leave the property. And then sometimes on top of that, you'd lose 3 or 4 or 5 people that would have to go on and shoot an event video. So
yeah, let me ask you, Mark, do you remember the term skeleton crew?
Yes, skeleton. It was literally, sometimes we would be, and I remember this because there was times when I was on the event crew, and then there were times when I was one of those people that wasn't allowed to leave the property. Yeah. So sometimes I'd be at the studio. It would be me, Mitch, no sound, no sets, no props, maybe a lighting person. And the lighting person was also a camera person. So this guy named John Gonzalez, he was the assistant cameraman for lighting. So he was the guy who basically had to make sure the exposure on the camera was set correctly.
Yeah, but he was a better cameraman than the cameraman.
That's right. But he was a better cameraman than a cameraman. And he was actually a better lighting guy than some of the gaffers. So
and he was a better human being than the cameraman.
Yes. Okay. I know you're not a big fan of big old Marcus, but at the end of the day, he was a human and he was dealt the cards. He was I'm
not mentioning
held
names,
the cards he was dealt.
I didn't mention any names. What are you talking about? I have to just say that the times I remember doing that when we were a skeleton crew, quite often it was easier to work because there was just a few of us. We were being left alone and we were kind of having fun and doing creative work. And we didn't have any of the club-footed guys that were getting in our way. It was sort of one of those things when you go, this is how much we can get done with a third or even a fifth of the people. Yeah. And why does it take us so long when we have all those people? And it is sort of this thing where in the Sea Org, in order to shoot a shot, you have to do a checklist for every single shot. So there were all these policies and procedures that you would just be doing as a matter of course, but you have to have a piece of paper and you have to say to yourself, okay, check the frame that there's nothing in the frame that's not supposed to be in the frame. Okay. No telephone poles.
Yeah. Is the camera level? Yes, the camera's level. Okay. Is the sound on? Yes, the sound. It's just like, but you have to do that every single shot 16 times a day.
Right.
And every single crew member has to do that. And then my job as the shoot crew chief would to be, well, get your stuff done. And then right when everybody was ready, I'd say checklist, and I would go makeup, costumes, sets, props, sound, camera, lighting, just like checklist. And everybody be like, yeah. And when I was first there, I put on a really good show. Like I was checking for checklists. And then as the years went by, it was just like, okay, we're going to roll lights, camera. And I would call the shot. And Mitch would call action. So I would be like, okay, settle down. We're going on film. Okay, everybody, we're good. Shut the hell up over there. And then, okay, lights, camera, or lights, sound, camera. What did I do? Sound?
Yeah.
Lights, camera. Or was it lights, sound, camera?
Yeah, lights got to go on for it. Lights, sound, camera.
It was lights, sound, camera. And then Mitch would go, action.
No, I'd say and.
Oh yeah, and.
I'd always say and, because I wanted them to know it was coming.
Yeah, that's right. I remember. And.
Yeah, action.
And I don't know how it was perceived by others, but I liked to talk very, very loud, and I can talk very, very loud to an entire studio. And no one could contend that they did not hear me.
No, not a chance. You did not need a megaphone, Mark.
No, never did. Never will. But knock on wood. Anyway, are we ready to get to some questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I think that was good. I think we kind of set it up and will be fun. Here's Denver Steve-O. Now, to be fair, Denver Steve-O has been pushing me and Mitch to do this series, and he kind of wanted to be part of it. And but because Mitch and I had already talked about it and we'd already said we were going to do it, it was like, sorry, Denver, you got to get in early to the game. You got to wake up before 11 a.m. if you want to beat this guy right here. Which was it, Mitch? Was Marc a hot go-getter or a sassy troublemaker on the verge of being sent to the RPF? Headley, have you been lying to us all this time? Osa plus poo smell. Yes. Yeah.
No, he was a hotshot go-getter. I mean, he was a kid. I mean, to me, because you were like 19 or 20 or something, right?
Yeah. When I arrived on the shoot team,
you were maybe 20.
Yeah, I want to say I was like in my early 20s. And to be fair, before I was on the shoot team, I had been in a bunch of different films. We shot a film called Problems of Life with Mark Toddy and Katie Mitchell.
Yeah, that was awesome.
And I walked across the First Street Bridge jaywalking. I went and ran into traffic, and then I was like, oh.
That was the first thing you ever did.
That's right. And I did that in 1990.
I would love to have a reel of all of your shots.
I would too. And that film used to play on cable TV, Problems of Life. So that it might be out there somewhere.
Yeah, they owe you some money for that.
Totally. I didn't sign anything that says you could use my likeness on cable TV.
Yeah, that's actually against the law. And then you did Wrong Room.
Wrong Room and EM5. That's the E-meter, how the E-meter works, how to set up a session in an E-meter.
E-meter, and then you cleaned up Danny Masterson's mess in the doll film.
That's right. I was the Sea Org sec checker. Sea Org sec checker who comes in.
We had to slap another guy's face on you after you escaped.
Oh, is that how you did it?
That's how they did it. Yeah,
they did a face replacement. Yeah, like face off.
Yeah, they did a face replacement. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Today they called it a deep fake, but yeah, it was
deep
a fake. We deep faked Mark to get him the hell out of there because you're in like full blown Sea Org uniform and you got your meter and you're
I saved the day, folks.
You're the law.
I am the hero of that entire movie.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I was also in a bunch of the other films just as the shoot crew chief. So it was sort of because I had been in a bunch of films before. Right. It was sort of established that Headley can do it. I mean, we're not talking about De Niro performances here. I'm talking about, I had to play the Scientology the way the person does the counseling. I had to nail that because that's a technical kind of point. Right. But besides that, because I had done it, if we were shooting and somebody didn't show up, it was sort of like, crew chief, I think you need to go to costumes and makeup. And I'd be like, you think? And be like, yep, okay. And I'd go change and they'd make me up and I would immediately be that person. So I'd have to, I think in one of the E-meter reads film, I falsified a read.
Oh, right.
And then I got dragged out by the Sea Org missionaries. Right. So I did the exact opposite of the other film. And then there was a lot of other films that I would either just be when we shot that film EM1, I was the psychiatric nurse that fried Lauren Hollander and then
took her jewelry,
dug in her ashes on the operating table and was like, "Oh, I got a necklace out of this."
Well, you didn't just do that. You gave the camera a smirk.
I did. I was like,
I didn't ask for. I'm like,
I did one of these. I went subjective and I went. And then I just like,
yeah, I mean, it was really good because it was definitely you did contribute. Absolutely.
I did. And I had a goatee. And I remember at the time that after I shot that, I don't think Dave Miscavige had seen me in a while. And when he saw the goatee, he was like, I saw you in Russia's the other night or whatever. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, you look like a real asshole with that goatee. And I said, thank you, sir. And then I just walked into the dining hall and somebody that was with me was like, you're pushing it, dude. You're really pushing it. Like that's you kind of went over the line with that. He's going to kick your ass for that. You know that, right?
That's so funny.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. Jack Okie. Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it. You can ask a question. Cat Matt. I'm going to say Mattiez. Cat Mattiez. I must declare my love for Going Claire. Oh, okay. Thanks.
Oh, declare. Wow.
Yeah, I get it.
That's a lot of Claires.
Yeah. Barry Stevenson said, what was a typical budget for a Church of Scientology film, knowing most of the crew's stage, equipment, etc., was free? Do you know, Matt? Do you know?
I mean, I have some idea.
I know because I put them together, so I know
Yeah,
exactly how
okay, go
much.
ahead. Yeah, go. I mean, I remember some budgets going as high as $60,000, but that was a very expensive film. But and the way that you guys would kind of be, I'll let you jump in and correct me. But let me just say
Yeah.
one thing. One thing that I know is not incorrect is that you can't compare it with like a Hollywood or a film industry budget because they don't count the labor force. There's zero cost, even though it costs them, a lot of money to pay people $50 a week because you got to house them and feed them. I mean, still you add it up, but that's not you okay, Mark?
Yeah, when you said
Yeah, I know.
you have to house them and feed them, I was like, dude, they weren't spending any money on that either.
No, but my
Oh my
point is,
gosh.
it's something, and it's not
Yes.
showing up in the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the equipment, although it costs a lot of money, and you should amortize it over the cost of all the films, but it was zero. So the only things was like film, lumber, like I mean, film like raw stock to shoot, lumber, tape. If we hired any actors, it was just these very hardcore costs. I remember 25 grand. I remember 60 grand. Depends.
Yeah.
And
That's
you remember what? A buck 380.
no. That was pretty accurate. When we were doing studio shots, it was really just there was Mitch. The budget was Mitch, film, processing, post production, like editing, post production to pay somebody to cut the film together at the end,
Right.
and then expendables. So like makeup we throw makeup $500. We throw costumes $500. If we were shooting a film like TR8, we'd need like X amount of wardrobes for each of the actors for each X amount of days.
Yeah.
And so maybe costumes would get anywhere from 500 to 5,000, depending on how many people were cast and how many outfits. And almost a lot of that they were expected to pull from stock. And the clothes that they had was like somebody knocked over a Goodwill. It wasn't something that you wanted to see anybody wear.
I used to look at, they'd bring me the guy dressed, and I'm saying, what, did you like dress this guy out of a dumpster? What?
Yeah, it was literally their stock outfits were like, what?
Yeah.
Like no one's wearing corduroy anymore, guys. You're gonna have, that's not gonna make it. Mitch is never gonna approve brand corduroy. Anyway, but then, and sometimes they'd have just jean jacket, that was one of the things that L. Ron Hubbard wrote about these films is that they needed to be timeless so that they could be shown over decades and not look like a giant shit show. Ironically, exactly what everything that he produced looked like.
Right. Well, there's a reason for that because he tried to he described timeless as happening in the year zilch. Remember that?
Yeah.
Like it was the year zilch, meaning whatever year or no year.
Yeah.
But the only thing that's actually really timeless is bad taste.
Yeah.
Because it's always bad.
Yeah. And I just realized what it looked like, the costumes looked like in the films that he shot. It looked like the 1970s Logan's Run. So how everybody is supposed to look like they're from the future and they have these long flowing white pants and pastel shirts. That's how all the costumes were in the Hubbard films.
Yeah, and you remember the little dolly we had, that crane.
The Moviola.
Yeah, no, not the Moviola, but there was actually the small little crane.
The Chapman?
It wasn't a Chapman. It was
the hokey pokey one.
Yeah, the hokey pokey. They bought that from Logan's Run. That was designed for some shots.
That's right.
On Logan's Run, and then they wanted to get rid of it because technically there was a lot of things wrong with it.
Yeah,
it wasn't. I forget what you call it, but it didn't. A good crane is not supposed to arc.
Yeah, it didn't have the fulcrum wasn't in the exact right. It wasn't weighted correctly. So even
really
if it just wasn't balanced right, and you're right. It had an arc to it. It wasn't a solid. It wasn't a linear thing. It had a weird thing that it would do. So optically, it would kind of freak. It would mess up the shot.
And the story that I heard was it was designed for one sequence on Logan's Run. There was that and that little car, the little golf cart thing.
The camera car.
The camera car. those were from Logan's Run. They'd done it for one sequence and then they just sold it, got it the hell out of there.
Yeah, that camera car had the basis. The starting point was a Mini Cooper, an original.
Really?
Yeah,
That's why it was so
original
noisy.
Cooper, and it was really tiny, but it worked on. It had hydraulics, so it had hydraulic controls.
Yeah.
It had gas and battery, so you
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
operate a crane. You could drive it as a motor, and then it had batteries. And of course, by the time I got to the shoot crew, they'd had this car for years and years and years.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It never ever worked. And I think it was when we had that guy James. I was like, James, you're the camera grip. Yeah, that car's yours. It's broken. Make it work. And for the first time ever, we used to just drive that thing around the property because we
Yeah,
never shot any shots with it.
No, never.
We
When it
did
first-
shoot that IES. We did shoot an IES horse intro with the camera car one time. I remember.
We're going to have to talk about that. When you guys finally fixed that thing, I jumped on it and started racing around the back road, and I ran into Dave.
Oh no!
Oh, yeah, he was on his motorcycle.
Oh, that's
almost ran him down.
right. I remember something about this.
Yeah, and he looked at me like, "You should be in trouble, but you're."
Yeah.
I'm gonna let this slide. But it was
Nice.
like, I couldn't believe it. It was just, I really pulled it in.
Okay, here Gary is correcting me, and he is exactly right. I think, maybe. Boys, Norton Air Force Base was gifted to San Manuel tribe in San Bernardino. Morongo is out by the outlet mall near PS. Yeah,
No, he's
Palm
right about
Springs.
that. No, he's
right.
absolutely right. It was just
Morongo is near Cabazon, and
Yeah.
San Manuel Band of Indian Tribe is the one in San Bernardino.
I wrote about this in my book, and it was absolutely San Manuel.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that it was gifted, Gary. I don't think, because what I read when I read about it, it was broken up, I guess you could say, given to a consortium of businesses, but because it had originally been Native American land, some of it had to revert back to the Indians. So I don't know. Can you butcher a bunch of Native Americans, take their land, and give it back to them, and call it a gift? I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure no matter what we say about this, we will be wrong and insensitive. So we're not going to talk about this anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that, Gary. Thank you for the super chat. Oh my God, here's Gary again. And God forbid your department was the one responsible for a blown shot. Okay, so this is a good thing. So if we did a shot, thank you for that, Gary. If we did a shot and we thought it was okay, it would get submitted. And if we knew it wasn't okay, we had to say, this is what we shot, but this is why it's not right. The camera is off, or there's a big old zit on the guy's neck, or the costume.
Out of focus.
Yeah. Oh my God. Mitch is never going to let this Marcus guy live any down. So one of the cameramen.
You keep saying his name. I don't get it. I haven't said his name. Oh, I did say it once. I think.
Anyway, this one cameraman, he shot a whole movie out of focus.
An entire film. Yeah,
So-
just when I had talked them into shooting 35.
Yeah.
2 years.
That's right.
Yeah,
We used to
right.
shoot on 16.
Yeah, and I talked him into shooting 35 because it would be more in focus when you reduce it to 16. And then this guy whose name I won't mention shot the whole film, and it was slightly out of focus. They sent him to an eye doctor, and they found out he needed glasses.
Yeah. It was not a good scene.
Yeah, and then
Anyway.
it took another 2 years to talk him into doing 35 again. But I have to say, Mark, my beef with him was none of that.
Yeah.
It was that he had a 15-year-old camera assistant, a really precious little girl on that, and he made her carry all the gear while he went and sat in the camera truck, and he just used to terrorize this person.
Yeah.
That's the beef that I have. So
Yeah, and to be fair, when I got there, he was the camera chief, but he didn't last very long at all.
No.
We were actually on a shoot, and David Miscavige, after he got busted off of the chief cameraman, David Miscavige made him be the clapper. So instead of being behind the camera, he was in front of the camera, and he would be the one that would, hit the little clapper before for sync at the beginning of the shot. And we were shooting a trailer in Los Angeles. We were shooting at the Hollywood Inn, that building on Hollywood Boulevard.
We did the machine gun thing.
Yeah, we did the police shootout outside the building, and we used the Scientology property for it.
Right.
And he escaped from that shoot.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, we all went. We shot all through the night, and he was in trouble and he was getting interrogated on a regular basis. So he had to go back up to the property every once in a while. If we did a location shoot, it'd be like,
Right.
hey, tomorrow, Marcus has got to go get sec checked. So he's got to go back to the base because he was in trouble and he was there interrogating to find out what he's up to.
Right.
And so we all shot all night long. It was a night shoot, location in Los Angeles, and we were staying at a Scientology. We were shooting and staying at a Scientology property. So we were all in LA. Right. Well, when we finished in the morning and the sun's out and everybody's like, okay, we're going to wrap up and go sleep during the day. And Marcus said, hey, I'm supposed to go back to the base to get sec check. And I was like, okay. So he takes off in the morning and we all sleep all day. And when I wake up, we're going to do another night shoot or we're doing something else. And then somebody calls me and says, hey, where's Marcus? And I was like, well, he went up this morning to get sec checked. And they're like, he never came back. And I was like, oh. And as soon as he never came back, be like, oh yeah, he's gone. And he's got like a whole day head start. So we're never going to see him again. And we never did. We never ever heard or saw from him ever again. No one has heard from this guy ever since that day. Yeah. Thank you for that, Jackson. Lady BB, I think we need to show Goldie some love and have her post her link to buy me a coffee. Thank you, Mark and Mitch, for all you do. Absolutely, Lady BB.
You're welcome.
For those who don't know, Goldie is a moderator in the chat, and whenever you guys get a little spicy, she kind of moves in and harasses the harangues or
harangues
harnesses.
That word.
She harnesses the chat so you guys don't get out of control.
Yeah,
Question, Mitch. What was the story you were told about Mark when he blew for good, and who is doing your jobs now, Oh, yeah, so two questions. So, yeah, what did they say? What did they tell you?
Well, I had these two. Well, they said he left. They said, oh, Mark blew. And you have to understand, like I had these two compartments. One compartment was Mark was my friend. Mark was a good guy. Mark and I had a lot of fun. We had a lot of interaction with each other. We were in the trenches, right?
Yeah.
And then the other compartment was Mark's an SP.
Yeah.
Right. So you had to keep those separate.
Yes.
Like you could, because those things didn't mix. You couldn't just say when you actually knew somebody and I liked them, and I knew he and Claire, and I knew, not to the full extent, but I knew how they had been treated. And when you know about that, and then the person leaves, you're kind of like, you're not upset about it. You're like, cool. So you put that in a compartment, and then there's the other one. Like if somebody says, yeah, Mark's an XP, I'm not going to go, no, he's a good guy. He just escaped. Yeah. So, but I'm telling you what my perception was. I wasn't really told anything because we weren't working together at that point.
No, we weren't.
I didn't need you're only going to be told about, like, if the cameraman hopped the fence or took a walk or escaped, whatever you want to say it, someone would come and tell me, because the next day the cameraman's not going to show up. But Mark had gone from Shuka Chief, from what I remember, he was in pre-production, and then you were the producer. Yeah. And then after that, I don't know what you were doing. So,
I was in doing stuff in manufacturing, and so I was already either over that area, and I would just kind of come by to check on them, or
so there was no reason for
or I was just in a completely other part of the property that never even had anything to do with
but what was the second part of her question, Mark?
Let me see. Oh, it's gone now. Oh, and the second part was, who's doing our jobs now?
Oh yeah, who's doing our jobs now? Okay, well, there's a guy named Sean
Alcock.
Sean Alcock.
Yeah.
He's been, I got a picture of him somewhere.
He was a really good guy, Sean.
Sean's a really good guy. He was he was
a bit of a he was a cadet. He grew up in Scientology in the Sea Org.
Sister, Mishi, who's a great girl. Yeah. The two of them were terrific kids.
And their moms were their mom was Nettie Alcock, who for a long time was posted at the property. And
they're
I think
like third generation, right?
Yes. So this kid, Sean, when he first got to the property, I want to say he was like 14 or 15.
Yeah.
And then when I got promoted out of the shoot crew, he replaced me. He became, I trained him, and he did a great job. He was amazing. And I think he might still be doing it to this day.
He was he was with me the last day I was with any of that crew was in January, February 2020.
And he was still the shoot crew chief.
Oh yeah. Well, I was then building another crew, because I got in trouble at SMP and I went back to Gold.
Yeah.
S&P wanted me back after 2 weeks. Gold was like, "You're never going back. You're going to build a second crew for us." So I had another guy that I was, but Sean was still the main unit, as we called it, shoot crew chief. And
Yeah.
Mishi his sister is a camera assistant. I had a picture of both of them from when we reshot TR-14. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, TR-4. I showed it to Sterling because they were buddies and grew up.
Yep.
And I just, because he and I talked about what it was like. Remember when we had staff members come in and just spend the day on the set? And Sterling was in a number of films.
Oh my goodness. We had some frequent flyers, either because they were drivers and they could drive other people to a location, or because they really just loved hanging out with the shoot crew. If you got to be on the shoot crew, or if you got to be in a shot, it was sort of like you're not a butterface, because they're going to put you on camera. And also if you were in trouble, if you were a SEER member in trouble, you weren't allowed to be in the films because possibly you might escape, and then we have to reshoot the film. So only certain people were allowed to kind of be in a shot or kind of work with us.
And also Sterling, because of his age, he was kind of a good-looking, awkward, skinny kid.
Yep.
And so he had a character look like he was Jason Begay's. He was the CIA director, office boy.
Yeah.
When we blew the CIA up.
That's right.
And then he did.
Do you remember what Jason said to him when he was sitting on his lap?
No.
Oh my goodness. So it was one of those shots where they do the scene, and then as we dolly out, Jason would just ad lib some, just nonsense.
This was when we blew them, they walked out of the rubble of the explosion, right? That one?
Well, yeah, but we did a before scene and then we did an after scene.
Right.
And the before scene is Jason was playing Hoover.
Right. He was
playing the FBI director Hoover.
He's being pervy.
Yeah, and he had like a 14-year-old office boy that was sitting on his desk in his lap in the scene. This is how Hubbard scripted it.
Yeah.
So Hoover has a little office boy, and it's supposed to be that kind of relationship, the inappropriate one. Right. And so as that we're backing out, Jason, Sterling was reading a comic while he was sitting on the desk. Right. And Jason goes, "You ever seen a grown man shower?" Like he would say something different each time we would pan out. He was in his typical Jason. Hey.
Yeah, he had a great sense of humor. He was.
He did.
Yeah, he was one of the only people that I really like. When he left and I lost that friendship, that I was really sad. I mean, I was, because he was one of the few of all the actors that I became friends with. I called him like 3 weeks. I was asked to call him.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this sometime.
Yeah, we should. Okay, I think there's one. Let's see here. Oh my God!
Have you ever seen a grown man shower? I'm sorry. I'm just like
every time it was a different thing. Next time I talk to him, I'm going to reach out to him. We really should try to get him on when we do talk about EM1 or when we talk about TR13, because
Sterling.
No, Jason.
Oh, you think that would be great?
If I could get him, we'll do it. I'm not making any promises, but it would be amazing if we could get him just for a few minutes to talk about either one of those.
Yeah.
Denver Steve-O, thank you for that. Don't worry, gang. I'll still get Mitch and Mark to talk film stuff on Xenu Nation. They really want me to interview the two of them. Yeah, I did agree to do that, and we might do that, because then we can have somebody ask us questions that we don't think to ask ourselves.
Yeah, and Steve-O is a film guy. So.
Yes, totally. Happy Puffin. This is the last one. Is chatting pantless out 2D? No, not really. I'm not going to sit up or stand up right now, but no, it's not.
Should we both stand up and show them we don't have any pants on?
No. I got a microphone. No, I'm wearing.
Yeah, I'm good. Look,
I have shorts on, but I am wearing clothes. I can't believe there's actually people that would do that.
You're wearing shorts in Colorado, and I'm wearing sweats in LA.
Well, also, I'm totally, I run really hot. So Colorado is perfect for the colder climate is right up my alley. Thank you guys for everybody who joined us. This is the first one. So we did TR8. So we'll cross that one off the list. Yeah. There's only 25 to go.
I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, and I think what we'll do is we'll obviously, just like we did when we shot them, we'll bundle the twofers. So if there's 10 and 10A or 2 and 2A or 9 and EM, the EM films have two-parters. Obviously, we're just going to do the one video for both of those.
The drill films, they don't count.
Yeah, and yeah, we'll see if I can. So if we can get somebody that was an actor or a crew member on any one of those films, if we can get them as a guest or a third wheel, I'll see if I can set that up. But you're right, for that for the TR1 film with that FBI scene, Sterling could talk about that, because we shot that scene with Sterling in Studio B at Norton. Yeah. And he'll be able to kind of fill in the blanks that the parts we didn't talk about Norton that we just were totally used to after years.
We're gonna keep talking about Norton. We're gonna talk about we did a lot of fun things there. When I interviewed Sterling, we talked about Norton and we talked about the film, but he never mentioned the lap scene. See, that's why if you're there, he's gonna remember a lot.
Oh yeah, because I could literally play back the entire day and just scroll through and go like, oh yeah, we did that, we did this, and
I was too busy going off getting Mexican food, so I missed it all.
Ain't that the truth, folks? Ain't that the truth? Chips and salsa. Okay, guys, thank you very much for joining us. Until next time, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, Mitch. Thanks for doing this. I think it was great.
Yeah, thanks. Look forward to doing it again.
Perfect. Okay, guys, out.